Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Like Minds. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, returning to you after a number of years, and it's just so exciting to have some of the original cast back as well. So if this is your first Like Minds, you've got a brilliant day ahead of you. If it's your second, third, fourth, or many, then you know what to expect. I want to start off by asking you, when was the last time that you went on something like a company away day, team day? Anyone been on one of those recently? Monday. What did you do on Monday?
We made towers out of spaghetti.
Excellent. Of course you did. Made towers out of spaghetti. You kind of know the thing that I mean, right? These are usually kind of awful events. Trust falls, human pyramids, abseiling up a helter-skelter in Milton Keynes, something like that, something atrocious. And we inflict these things upon one another from time to time because we're trying to do something to unblock or unlock something in our teams, our groups, our communities, our classes, for those of you coming from school this morning. We're doing something to loosen up something that we might have felt was blocked or something that was lost. And broadly speaking, most people, when confronted with the idea of a kind of collective activity that's tangentially related to their day-to-day work life that's being forced upon them, usually approach that with either apathy at best or typically a rather heavy sense of loathing. Now, even those fused with alcohol and food can sometimes, help loosen the mood. We like to do that from time to time. But most people, if you wanted to actually arrange an evening out with people from work, you probably would have done it yourself, rather than ending up having to do, mocktail making at 2 a.m. with Clive from accounting. That's something that we don't always kind of volunteer for. Yet, we persist with these behaviours, and it's because of these reasons that we want to bring companies and groups and teams together, right? Everyone would like a team that worked a little bit better. And yet, sadly, we persist with this stuff because very often we actually lack the ability to be playful with one another. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning. You see, play is something that I and we at Lego deeply believe in, you would hope. To be playful in the way that we bring about change in society, to be playful about the way that we raise our families, how we guide our teams, how we play with our kids. You see, play is one of the most powerful engines that you, as a business leader or a community leader or just a part of a team, have in your toolbox. It's the thing that you could be doing so much more with, but often it's also the most neglected tool in the toolbox. And sadly, we need to do something about it. So that's what I aim to try and help you do this morning, is have a go at reclaiming a playful culture in your teams and organisations. I joined the Lego group nearly 2 years ago now into a team, as Ollie mentioned in the introduction, into the global social media team. We're a team of 50 people running social media at Lego around the world, based in our 5 hub locations in different sites around the globe. And I joined a company that was riding the crest of a wave started 85 years ago this year, as we celebrate our 85th anniversary of when Olcott Christensen, the great-grandfather of our current chairman, founded the company in a small little town called Billund in western Denmark. Anyone been to Billund by chance? A few of you. I'm always surprised by the amount of people that have. There's not many people there. There's about 6,000 of us, and when everyone goes home at the weekend for work, there's about 2,000 left behind, so it's not a big place. There's a lot more minifigures there, though, than people. And the thing with that kind of place is that from the very earliest of days, it was a family company, and it grew from that small family dynamic of people working together in a small wooden workshop that unfortunately got burnt down once, and is now still stood on that same site. When Ol first founded the company, he instilled a set of values into the business, but ultimately he was passing them down to his children. Godfred, his son, was the first to take that on, and Kjeld, our most recent chief executive a couple of years, about a decade ago now, also held these values. And they're probably most clearly expressed by a phrase in Danish, which is "det bedste ikke forgot," which roughly translated, and that's about the only Danish I know, I'll just point out, it's the 9th hardest language in the world to learn, so I don't suggest you pick it up anytime soon. There's only about 5 million people that use it, so it's really not worth it. But it's a good phrase. And the phrase itself roughly translates into "only the best is good enough." Or actually, that's rather a mistranslation. It actually means that not even the best is good enough. And it's this kind of competitive edge, this spirit of that we deserve to deliver the very best for the children that we make these things for and these little guys for. We have to instill that into what we do day to day. And so competition is the first of my C's, which I would like to talk to you about this morning, which is 3 C's of building a playful culture. You see, the competitive spirit is something that we all try and hold on to as we grow up, right? We all want to be competitive. We are going after the fight. We're going for the grind. This is a kind of language that prevails quite a lot right now. And some people exercise their competitive spirit more than others. Some of you will take it up in what I consider to be completely ludicrous things like exercise and, triathlons. I mean, like, who are you people? I don't understand that. But, others of us will set ourselves new challenges daily, weekly. How many, cups of water can you drink? How mindful you can be? Question mark. When did mindfulness become a competition? Just saying. Right, so, all of these things we are beginning to instill into ourselves, or maybe it's just you like playing Call of Duty or how many Pokemon you can catch over the next person. I'm still looking for a Pikachu, if anyone can help me on that front. You see, competition is built into us. It's that competitive edge. And we are all competitive. Who thinks that they're competitive? Who doesn't think they're very competitive? Okay, cool. Well, the people that put their hands up to say they're not very competitive, are you all on Instagram? No? Twitter? Some of you? Okay, let's play a competition then. I would like the first 5 people to follow me on Instagram there will win this box of Lego Classic. Who's competitive? Go. Huh? You can unfollow and follow again, Gabs. It's up to you. Trust that Gabrielle, the most competitive person in this room, just putting that out there, would say why we would not follow you. Let's just refresh this. Who's Cameron Ed Baker? Cameron, he's on the team, guys. He's on the team. Who's Beb So Sullivan on Instagram? Well done. Okay, there you go. 1 box of Lego Classic for you. Excellent. You see, we're all competitive. We're all competitive. And competition is a good thing. However, it's not the only aspect of playfulness. Playfulness is made up of many different aspects. And when we bring together these 3 different C's, as I'm going to talk to you about in this culture, we actually bring together the best way of building an internal culture and team. The second is challenge. I've spent the majority of my time since joining Lego working on a little project we've called Lego Life. And Lego Life is the first of a kids' digital social network that we believe is truly safe for children. We launched earlier this year. We're now up and running in about 14 different countries. You can go and find it on the App Store, iOS and Android. And we built the whole system around the idea of challenging one another. And not just the challenges that are built into the app, but the way that we went about going to get to this stage is challenging. This conference today kind of has a loose theme around this idea of startup to scale up. And whilst we're a big old business at Lego, you would assume that doing something like starting a children's social network would be quite an easy thing for us to do. We'd probably just gather a few developers around, a bit of resource, and we'd just crack on. But for those of you working in digitally focused companies or agencies and businesses, you would think that that'd be quite easy. But I'm sad to say that you were wrong. In fact, if anything, I think it's probably harder. It's one of the things that we realized when embarking on the project nearly 2 years ago. It had all the hallmarks of being a startup. When we first started, we were bidding for internal funding to try and get it done, trying to get the extra headcount. You've all kind of been there if you've been in that situation. And we also faced all of the pitfalls that you come across if you're doing that. Things like pitching for people that didn't believe in it, working with external partners and relationships that had to be changed, promises that were regularly met and many that were failed upon, and lots of expectations that were set that were fallen short of. You see, when you're trying to overcome this obstacle of building a new digital thing in a company whose rigor and quality and kind of dedication to precision has literally been built into the walls of the buildings, that proposes a slightly different kind of culture to one that is about digital and agile and all of those kind of words. And you get what I would say culture clash in that example. Take the Lego brick for just a case in point, and this might help illustrate it. These are kind of fairly humble, simple things. They've been the same design for nearly 60 years. It's the 60th anniversary of the Lego brick next year. And if you've got one in your attic that you've been hanging around saving for your grandchildren, you mean playing with yourself, then you know that it will still click together with any of those ones that come out of that classic box that we've just handed out down there. The reason that that happens is because a Lego brick is precisely molded to within 0.4 microns. 4 microns. Anyone know how much 4 microns is? Any maths students in the group back there? Okay. Well, for those of you that failed higher maths like I did or decided just not to take it, that is around about 0.0004 millimeters. Now, to put that into context, the human red blood cell is 5 microns across. So these things have to be machined pretty precisely. And that's how they fit together over such a long time. Now, there are endless possibilities built into one of these. And that's where the challenge of building with a Lego brick is actually built right in. Challenge is a good thing, and it's the second C in my culture, so maybe we should do a challenge. Where's Drew? Where's he lurking? Okay, no, Chris, you can come instead. Oh, Drew Ellis, everybody, founder of Like Minds. Give him a hand. Drew, I'd like you to come and do an experiment with me. This is called a challenge. It's the second C of the playful culture thing I'm talking about. Here's a stack of 6 Lego bricks. Thank you, sir. You just take those. So, with 6 Lego bricks, you put 2 of these 2, 4, 8 stud things together, and there are lots of different combinations you can make. It's kind of a couple of hundred. If you have 6 of them, there's nearly 1 billion combinations you can make. Actual billion. That's the real mass behind it. And so this makes the kind of boundless creativity and endless possibility of these things kind of built into the very system. And we like to challenge one another with it, so you can't help, he's just already building something. Interesting, isn't it? So what I'm going to do, Drew, is I'm just going to, you stay there, I'm just going to build something over here, and I'm going to give you 6 seconds to look at this, and then I would like you to build the same thing that I have just built. Go. Start. No, same colours, same order.
Colours. Okay.
Look, study it, stop building. Just study it. I'm gonna hide it now. Okay. How's he doing? Now, Drew does come from a design background, so let's just see how this worked out. Atrocious, mate.
Oh, green on the top. Red? Yeah.
You tried, well done.
Yeah. Okay.
You can take those with you. Thanks, Drew. Big hand for Drew. You see, the amount of planning and rigor and testing that goes into making these things attracts a certain type of personality. It attracts a certain type of culture that favors precision and quality and dedication. And if you come into a culture like that is machining literally billions of these, about 20 billion of them every year, to 4 microns of accuracy, and you come in and say, I'd like to do a little digital project. A digital project that we're going to do agile. We're going to do sprint. We're going to beta, someone laughed at sprint, I love that. We're going to beta test. We're going to roll out with something that isn't actually entirely formed, we're not sure if it's going to work, and we're going to iterate as we go. Funnily enough, that doesn't always go down so well. And that whole culture clash, when you bring these two things together, means that there is challenge literally built into the organization. But there is a way of doing challenge in a playful way that makes it possible that you don't end up just ruining all the relationships along the path. Some of you might have come across this book. It's called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. I thoroughly commend it to you. It's all about this idea of challenging radically and challenging directly whilst showing great compassion and empathy for the people around you. In her book, she gives out this argument that if you're going to challenge with direct correlation to your ability to demonstrate compassion and empathy, then you're actually able to challenge in a way that doesn't ruin relationships, but actually makes them stronger. And I think that if we could all apply a little bit more radical candor, rather than what she also talks about, this idea of ruinous empathy, which I love that phrase, where we just kind of don't ever challenge anybody, but kind of give them lots of positive affirmation. We just basically ruin one another, and it's not the best of ideas. At LEGO, we have this idea about sparring partners. Some of you might have heard that. I wrote a decent article about it on LinkedIn. You can go read it there. But if you don't do that, then I'll tell you about it now. We have this idea where you actually have different members of hierarchies from across the organization challenging one another on different ideas. And sometimes that might be the boss challenging the employees, but sometimes it goes right back around the other way. And you see, when you set these things up in advance rather than waiting for the conflict to arise, you move from conflict to challenge in a playful way. For those of you that are running startups or small businesses, anybody in that kind of context in this house, you see, you guys are massively privileged because you get to set the culture of your businesses from the very get-go. And you have a massive weight of responsibility on your shoulders, if you didn't feel it already, to make sure that when you establish that culture, that you can bake this playfulness into it from the very get-go, that you can have healthy competition, that you can challenge wisely with deep empathy and great gratitude and a load and load and load of sympathy for the people that you're hiring because they have to work for you, you're the boss. And some of you aren't that great at it. Some of you are really good at it, and some of you are somewhere in between. And so you have to set it up so that people can challenge you, because if they can't, then they are feeling downtrodden and they're never going to progress. For those of you who are in bigger organizations, anyone in kind of a bigger company, something of a larger kind of scale, you see, you also don't get off the hook because you have the ability to challenge the culture that comes around you in a way where you don't propagate ruinous empathy, that you don't take people down the line of never understanding whether they've done something wrong, where you tolerate bad work goes on being bad. And you can stop it because you can choose not to tolerate it. But you can choose not to tolerate it in a way that is playful, in a way that acknowledges the person at the other end of the equation and care deeply for them whilst also challenging them deeply. And you see, when you break down those norms in a big business, you begin to see a playful culture begin to emerge. Now, the third C is probably the most important, yet probably the hardest to establish, and that is what I call composition. Composition is the third C because I was trying to find a word for storytelling or narrative that began with C and I couldn't come up with something better. So it's composition now. But I think it kind of works. Most of you were taught art of storytelling in one mean or another. Some of you in school, some of you at school when you were there, some of you when you dropped out of it. That you were taught either how to tell stories in English class. You were taught how to tell a story through musicality, whether you were writing lyrics or songs. You were taught how to act out stories in drama classes. You were taught the story of the world through history and geography. So we've all got storytelling baked into us somewhere along the line. But telling a story and composing a narrative, this composition of the third C, is something that really we lose an awful lot of attention to when we kind of graduate out of the kind of education world and we begin to enter into business life. We often leave the storytelling and narrative driving up to the CEOs and the kind of these C-suite people. But actually, it's one of those things that we need to hold on to very much more dearly. I'll give you an example. Most of us revisit the idea of storytelling when we have kids. Who has kids here? Okay, so parents in the room, I can sympathize with you. You know that if you're trying to reason with a constipated, crying toddler at 3 a.m. in the morning, and you're trying to tell them about the facts about better fiber intake and your kind of high water ingestion, that unfortunately that's probably not going to go very far. But actually, if you tell the story of the kind of magical princess that took a wonder potion that made her light and airy and feel all relieved, and she was the one that kind of went on to slay the dark dragon of the morning, that story might just do the job of getting the little dose of Calpol into her face, and she might shut up for a couple of hours, and you'll get some sleep. I'm just, not that this is a personal thing at all. And so, storytelling when we become parents is something that we tend to revisit. One, because you're reading a lot of books most of the time, but also because it's the way that children learn. It's the way that we absorb that information. And the truth is that we all learn that way. We don't stop learning through stories. We just stop telling them to one another. And so if we were to be better at composing better stories, if we were better at actually becoming more playful in our workplaces, in our families, and in culture, perhaps we wouldn't be in the situations where we've got different narratives being told all over the world that are looking quite destructive. Stories of nuclear war and famine, kind of being coming a little bit too close to home. And things like the biggest companies in the world who need better stories being told to them. Whether you're a bank trying to come back from a scandal of destroying a financial market, or perhaps a taxi company that needs a new CEO. These are the types of businesses that have to have new stories told for them, right? And the storytelling often is the job that we give back to those top people. But when we all learn to tell better stories to one another from top to bottom and across an organization, we move from a place of being just going along with the day-to-day to being much more playful in the way in which we handle it. We need better stories to move forward. There's this part in the Bible, we're in church and I'm a big fan of it, where God speaks this story into the void. At the start of Genesis, this idea that there is nothing and that he speaks and then there's something. And we do that all the time. Every time that you come up against a challenge or a difficulty in your business, in your home life, with your family or with your friends, you have the opportunity to speak a new story into that environment and change the narrative. It's the most powerful thing, and we often neglect it. And so I would ask you and implore you that this morning you think about better stories to tell. The prevailing composition right now that's playing itself out in the business world is this idea about playing to win. Anybody read Playing to Win or kind of been through that kind of model? You've kind of read it. And you hear an awful lot about this idea of like the hustle, right? My friend Gary Vee kind of talks about the grind, the hustle is all about the hustle. And I kind of get it, We love that Monday motivation, right? Hashtag Monday motivation. All helpful things if you're primarily motivated by the idea of winning, of course. The only problem with narratives about winning is they work on the presupposition that there is indeed a game at work to be won. And that if you play by the rules or you break them, or you just go on playing longer than anybody else, that you can win that game. And we all do in our own little ways every day. We try and get a few more likes on your snap of your smashed avocado. That's right. There was a time, by the way, that if a smashed avocado arrived on your plate, you would have sent it back and said, "What did you do?" Just pointing it out. Don't know where that came from. Avocados are work of the devil. I'm not talking about them anymore. The world of endless scrolling and points and leaderboards in all of these different apps that we spend our time in seep their way into our work cultures. Winning is a fine aspiration in the right context. But to be winning in business, as in life, assumes that someone else is losing. A playful culture, like any culture really, it is more than the sum of its parts. You see, whether you're starting out in a small business, whether you're in a class of people in a school, whether you are in a bigger business or in a team, one of the hardest things you can do is to try and set a culture, whether you're dealing with not much scope or too much. It's the hardest thing you can do, but it's the most rewarding if you can get right. You see, great cultures are built on great values. Behaviors, they might shape and change and grow and morph as they increase in size. But true values hold cultures together. They'll outlive you and your teams and your goals every time if you build a decent one. So I hope this morning that if you take nothing more out of this silly little talk, is that we can all be a little bit more playful in what we do. And that I would hope that you developing a new culture, that you take a great deal of pleasure and delight and joy in development out of the idea of not just playing to win, but playing just to play. May you go and build a playful culture for yourselves. Thanks for having me. God bless. Happy building.